Delhivery is a 5-year-old business. I'm one of the 5 founders, and the way it started was Suraj, Mohit, and I, 3 of the 5 founders, along with Bhavesh and Kapil. The 3 of us used to work together at Bain, and we had worked extensively in the telecom space. And I think what was becoming clear to us was that the internet was something that was really going to revolutionize businesses in the next couple of years. And I think the energy we felt around the internet space, the coming internet boom, was that we have to be a part of this somehow. And so we quit Bain. And when we started talking to people and asking them, sort of what is interesting, what do you think the internet's really going to change? We spoke to e-commerce companies and we spoke to investors, and they said, look, what's interesting is while all of these e-commerce companies are going to sell tons of products to people and they're going to buy them, one of the biggest problems is how do you deliver these products to these consumers. Logistics was turning out to be a big challenge. And where the idea really came from was that Suraj and I lived opposite each other pretty much in Gurgaon with a courier shop between us. And so I asked the courier guy to deliver a book to Suraj, who lived across the road. And he said, it's 340 rupees and I'll deliver it in 2 days, which was something we couldn't understand fundamentally. And so when we actually spent time, we realized that there were inefficiencies in the system which were A, being priced in, and B, were leading to sort of a decline in consumer experience. So we said, can we solve this problem as delivery? And we thought we had a better idea. And that's really how the idea of Delhivery came about, and that's how we started the company. So we started with a very simple premise. There were 3 things that we were trying to achieve. One was really how do we deliver the product faster? So instead of spending the 2 days in transit, how do we make sure that it gets delivered the same day or the next day? The second element was really how do we create greater visibility for the product? So when an e-commerce company ships to a consumer, the first SMS you get, obviously, or the email you get is to say, well, yes, your product has been shipped. And then we realized that for many logistics companies, it was impossible to tell where your product actually was. So we said, how do we show that information in real time to both the shipper as well as the receiver? And the third one was, I think that initially was our biggest competitive differentiator, was we said, look, India is a cash economy. People are going to pay for these products using cash, partly because credit card penetration is low, partly because it takes time for trust to build up to pay online. So we said, look, we're actually a big offline payment gateway. And so how do we manage cash better than anyone else? What used to happen in the early days, 5 years ago or more, is when cash was collected by the logistics company, it would be remitted back to the e-commerce company, 30 days later. And then the e-commerce company would remit it back to their merchants, another 7, 10, 15, 30 days later. Which meant if you were a small merchant trying to go online, your working capital cycle was 60 days. So that's where we came in and we said, why can't you do this in 2 or 3 days? Why can't you do this every day? So that was a simple value proposition with which we started the business. We'll be faster, we'll create greater visibility, and third, we'll manage cash better than anybody else. Over time, what we have realized over the last 5 years is that the Indian logistics challenge is much larger than just the last mile, and it's much larger than just cash on delivery. What the industry is really crying out for is a large, open sort of infrastructure and technology platform for logistics, which means warehousing, line haul, last mile delivery, first mile services, which is pickup, for small businesses, for large retailers, for guys for hyper-local retail, which is now, sort of the more popular part of e-commerce. So what we're trying to build now is say, can I create that large infrastructure and technology platform, and over time also allow other companies to partner and use our infrastructure and our technology to really offer services similar to delivery, perhaps, maybe even competing services to what we do. Because the problem is so large that I don't think one delivery can solve it. I don't think one delivery plus one Blue Dart plus one, Aramex will be able to solve this problem. We're going to need hundreds of us to really go out and solve this. So that's really the ambition now with the business model. The early days were not very easy because it was very difficult to go to the logistics head of a e-commerce or retail company and say, well, we're a new startup in the space. Why don't you give us these products to deliver? Because they would say, look, we don't know who you are. We don't know what your systems are like, and you want us to give you iPhones and laptops and expensive products. So we started off with a very simple premise. We said, look, give us 2 metrics that you think are important to you, right? Fortunately, what most people came back with was speed of delivery and cash management. So we said, all right, where are you today on these metrics? So on speed of delivery, we said, average delivery time is 3 days, and they said our cash time is, 30 days. So we said, all right, we'll do 1 day and 2 days on the cash side. Now give us 40 shipments, and we won't charge you for the first month. If you don't like this, we won't come back to you. And people were receptive. For what it's worth, I think entrepreneurs in India are supportive of other entrepreneurs in India. So I remember the first guys who signed up with us were Abhishek Goyal from Urban Touch, who also is an angel investor in Delhivery. Prashant Tandon and Sameer from Healthcart, Gautam from Times of India, Sanjay Natkarni from Baby OA. And we just went founder to founder and we said, look, this is what we're trying to do, man. Is this going to work? And they said, look, you know what? We don't know. Go ahead and try. And so that's really how it started. The inflection point was more internal than external. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. One of the choices we made, and I think that comes from the backgrounds that we came from, was we said, what does scale really mean for delivery? How do we know that we're now going to be a scalable business? And we said, yeah, look, for 1 year, let's do nothing but just perfect how to build one distribution station, one last mile delivery center, nothing else. We put in our capital into the business. We could have tried to expand very fast and go to many cities, which many of our competitors at that time did do. And we said, look, until we understand the problem completely and we can design sort of in our minds at that time, of course, things have changed, the perfect last mile delivery center, we're not going to go to any other cities. And so we spent 1 year in Delhi, which is why the name also came about Delhivery, because we said we deliver products and we're in Delhi, so, let's call it Delhivery. And I think the inflection point for us was when we opened our second delivery center. Our first delivery center took us 1 year to build. Our second delivery center took us a month to build. Our third delivery center took us 2 weeks to build. Today, our delivery center takes us 2 days to build. That for me was when we really understood that this is how the business scales. We know the unit of the business, and now it's just a question of putting lots of units together and sort of building the business on top of it. But I think that was really the definitive moment in that sense. I think our vision is very simple. It is to fulfill all of India's online consumption demand for products. So in some sense, the vision is both broad and narrow at the same time. It's broad in the sense that we want to fulfill all of India's online consumption demand for products. We don't care whether the product is a mobile phone, a piece of furniture, industrial safety products. It makes no difference to us. What that allows us to do is to look at every industry and say, is this industry going to be part of consumption? We can look at auto components and say, will auto components be consumed online? And if the answer is yes, then Delhivery is a meaningful player in that market. What it also does is to keep us focused and to say, if it's not going to be online, then Delhivery is not the right partner. For instance, I don't think, much as we may have the infrastructure to do it, we're going to go out and try to disrupt logistics of cement. Maybe not now. Maybe at some date in the future, people will buy cement online, and we'll think about that market. But it keeps us focused on that. So it's a very simple vision. We don't care whether it's B2B, B2C, consumer to consumer, cross-border or domestic. None of these matters to us. The industry doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to us whether people are from the mobile phone industry, whether from the auto components industry, pharmaceutical industry. All of these are segments where Delhivery will play. And that's really how we see the business growing. Multiple segments, multiple kinds of customers, united by one thing, that it's online consumption. Engineering, in one word. We are not trying to solve this problem through manpower. We have a large number of people, of course, but we spend an inordinate amount of time studying them, studying our facilities, studying the inefficiencies in our network. Let me admit straight out that we are not as good as we would like to be as a company. We're not there. We're a 5-year-old company still trying to figure out how to solve a very, very complicated problem in India. I'll give you an example, right? Why logistics can become very challenging. Last week was Makar Sankranti in Gujarat. It was Pongal in South India. And it's holiday season, but that doesn't change people's demand for products. It in fact raises people's demand for products. And then the question becomes, how do you manage all of these constraints around yourself? It could be something as simple as that. And we run into weather, we run into traffic, we run into taxation issues. How do you sort of solve all of these? And I think those slow us down. So that's really what we're trying to achieve in that sense. How do we get better at service every day? How do we make tangible improvements? And the only way for us to do that is by going back to an engineering mindset, and not you can build businesses two ways. You can spend a ton of cash and throw thousands of people at the problem, and I think that really separates us. We have a team now of about 275 industrial engineers and a team of about 140 people in technology and core data sciences. And they're working on problems which could be as diverse as where should my warehouses be? What should a warehouse look like? What's the floor strength for the warehouse? How should my racks look? How does a truck dock within a warehouse? Our data services guys are working on things like Indian addresses are very complex, right? This address could be said 5 different ways. How does a machine understand what this address really is? When a product is shipped to you, I could call it, Nokia Asha 505 Black, Nokia Asha 505 Black with these headphones, Nokia Asha 505 Black with, free pen drive. They're still the same product. So how do you understand products? How do you understand addresses? How do you understand consumers and what they're buying? So that really separates us, I believe, from our competitors. I think we're in the middle of, we're at perhaps the inflection point in Indian e-commerce at the moment. This year, I think Indian e-commerce is expected to be about $11-12 billion. And our estimate internally is that just the B2C segment, not even adding B2B, C2C, everything else, I think in 5 years we're talking about $100 billion market. And if you layer on B2B, hyperlocal, C2C, cross-border trade, and as that starts becoming simpler and more companies sort of choose the internet as a medium of distribution and sale, you're going to see perhaps a $160-180 billion market going online or being created in front of our eyes in the next 5 years. The reason I believe that's going to happen is India's got a unique we're at a unique evolution point. If you think about global markets, you always go from mom and pop stores to organized retail, brick and mortar, to e-commerce. In India, it's almost e-commerce is modern retail. There is no other modern retail. Right? Modern retail is limited to the few cities that are large. But if I'm sitting in I don't know, maybe in Asansol, and I want to buy a Zara T-shirt, I can't buy it. The only way for me to buy it is to buy it online. So the Zara store is never going to go there. So what's really happening in India is that we're seeing 3 large or 4 large Amazon kind of businesses grow at the same time. And we're going to see that in B2B, and we're going to see that in C2C, whether it's a Quicker or an OLX. On the B2B side, whether it's an industry buying or whoever else goes and starts this business, right? I think that's really why we have so much hope in the sector. And conservatively, our estimate is we're talking all things put together, $150-180 billion market in 5 years. I think what's amazing is the number of companies that are being started every year and the kinds of sectors that they're being started in. While obviously a lot of the focus has been on e-commerce and on sort of the product retail side, we're seeing companies come out in healthcare, we're seeing companies come out in hardware, we're seeing companies come out in obviously in e-commerce, in logistics. There is literally, people are building electric vehicles, right? And it's amazing in that sense. None of this was there 5 years ago. Or even if it was there, it wasn't particularly well known and hadn't sort of bubbled to the surface, which it now has. I think what's great is that everybody realizes that an iconic set of Indian companies is being built as we speak. If I just look at Sachin Bansal and Binny Bansal and Mukesh building Flipkart, or Kunal and Rohit building Snapdeal, or ShopClose or whoever else, I think in that sense what's beginning to happen is people are looking at them and saying, we can do that, right? There is, if Flipkart can be built out of India, a Delhivery can be built out of India, a million other companies can be built out of India. So I think what's really energizing is the fact that there is that much hope and there's that much effort which is going into building potentially great businesses in the country. Whether you take a Practo or you take a Ather or whoever. What role do Indian entrepreneurs have to play? I think one role that the more senior class of entrepreneurs, this is the guys who've been doing it for a little bit longer, have to play is to mentor and coach the guys who are starting off now. Which is to really, entrepreneurship is a hard and lonely process. A certain amount of mentorship is essential. The other is, if you look at India historically, we've been a country of nation builders. When you think of J.R.D. Tata, when you think of, and their contributions to the Indian economy, when you think of Visvesvaraya, I think at some stage it will not be wrong for the government, the people to really expect that Indian entrepreneurs will give back as much as they can. We are building systemically important businesses. We are creating employment. We're creating jobs. We're creating wealth for people. But also the ability to give back is something that I think Indian entrepreneurs owe. I think we also owe, many people try not to behave, not to sort of work with the government, right? We try and work around the government. That laws exist and yes, we must follow them, but let's not sort of get too involved with the government. I think all of us have a very important role to play in shaping policy, in attempting to shape policy. At the end of the day, the government must do what is in the public's best interest, but around, for instance, one of the things we've been trying to work with the government on is to say simplify taxation, right? So I think only new generation entrepreneurs are able to take those kinds of positions. Normally what happens is when you go into a meeting of this kind, the guys on the other side are asking for tax stops, or they're asking for an SEZ status, or for the land they have, or whatever it is. I think we have to elevate ourselves above that and to ask for things that will matter many years in the future, perhaps not even just to us, but to everybody. And that's really where I see our role in the country. We're here to, at the end of the day, we're here, right? We're building these businesses. There's got to be a point to them. Like, for instance, one of the things we would love to do is to modernize the Indian Post. They're a competitor to us, of course, but outside of that, we look at the Post and we say, wow, you go to every single pin code in the country. Now, is there a way for Delhivery to work with the Indian Post? Of course there is. And we have a role to play there. So I think that's really the role. We have to reshape what exists. We have to mold it, give back, and coach and mentor the people who will come and start businesses in the future.